1:13 p.m., the 3rd of March, 1961, the front stoop of 22 Braddock Lane, Harlem, where the paint peels like old secrets and the hallway smells like Sunday grease and radiator steam. Two men stood shoulder to shoulder in the doorway, not letting anyone in, not letting anyone out. They weren't loud. They didn't have to be. One of them, Bruno Knuckles Marrone, kept cracking his knuckles, one finger at a time, like he was counting down somebody's courage. The other, Raynard Pike, held a cigarette he never lit, tapping ash that wasn't there like time owed him money. Inside the apartment, Bumpy Johnson's mother sat in her chair with her Bible open, listening to their shoes scrape the threshold like a threat. Then, one of the men leaned in and said the sentence that turned a doorway into a battlefield. "Tell your boy," Bruno murmured, smiling. "This is what disrespect looks like." Freeze that, because mobsters think intimidation works everywhere. They think every door's just wood and hinges. But in Harlem, a mother's door isn't just a door, it's a line in the ground, and the question isn't whether Bumpy would respond. The question is what happens when the whole neighborhood decides. Nobody gets to bring war to a mother's doorstep. But that wasn't the end, because when Bumpy heard one sentence, he left a meeting mid-sip. No shouting, no theatrics. That night, Harlem went unusually quiet, and by morning, the boss who sent those men was apologizing, not because he turned soft, because he turned scared. Now listen. This is a fictionalized, dramatized street legend, retelling with grounded cultural context, not a sworn history, not a blueprint for harm. We're keeping it responsible. This is about power paperwork and how boundaries in Harlem were enforced collectively. Bumpy's real power wasn't a gun, it was access to people, to systems, to the kind of favors that decide whether a building inspector shows up or doesn't, whether a case gets misfiled or remembered, whether a man eats safe or eats nervous. The city doesn't run on rules, it runs on favors, and somebody thought they could buy Harlem's respect with fear, the shadow behind the door. Blocking wasn't Bruno or Raynard. It was a man named Silvio Kane. Silvio wasn't the boss you saw in photographs. He was the boss's handler, the fixer who made threats look like business, and business look like misunderstandings. Silvio's tell was a gold cigarette case. He clicked open and shut even when he didn't smoke. And he always said the same line like it made him reasonable. "For the family," Silvio would murmur. The institutional face helping him was Captain Roland Sutter, precinct commander, crisp uniform, cold smile. His tell was tapping a fountain pen twice against his desk before he lied. Tap, tap, and the word he loved, like it was armor procedure, Captain Sutter would say. Then there was Bruno, on-scene enforcer, knuckles cracking, smile thin. His tell was his knuckle, counting, and the phrase he repeated whenever he wanted a room to shrink. "Be smart," Bruno would whisper. 3 villains. 3 tells. And one mother caught in the middle like she was collateral. Bumpy's allies mattered here because no one holds a block alone. Little Leon Vega, runner young, fast knee bouncing when fear got loud. Miss Odessa numbers queen, older broker, never blinking first. Eddie Glass former, cop turned contact, tired eyes, steady hands, knew where procedure hid its dirt. And Ruthie Caldwell, journalist, ink-stained finger, a nose for hypocrisy, sharp enough to cut glass. They were the difference between rage and strategy. Because Bumpy wasn't going to solve this with volume. He was going to solve it with certainty. It started at 2:06 p.m. in the back room of the Monarch Social Club, where the air smelled like cigar smoke and floor polish, and the metal chair legs scraped the tile like teeth. Bumpy was in a sit-down already, one of those busyness meetings where everybody smiles while measuring your pulse. Silvio Kane sat across from him, gold cigarette case clicking open and shut. "For the family," Silvio said, smiling. "We want peace, Bumpy." Bruno stood behind Silvio, cracking knuckles one finger at a time. Be smart, Bruno murmured to the room like a lullaby. Bumpy listened. Calm, then Leon burst in, breathless, eyes wide. They at your mama's, Leon said, voice shaking, blocking her door. The room shifted. Silvio's cigarette case paused mid-click. Bruno's knuckles stopped cracking for the first time, like his hands forgot the count. Bumpy didn't blink. He didn't slam the table. He didn't curse. He just stood up and put his hat on like he was leaving church. Silvio lifted a hand, polite. Let's keep it quiet. Bumpy's eyes landed on him calm and cold. You should have kept it respectful, Bumpy said. Bruno took half a step, shoulders widening. Sit down, Bruno whispered. Be smart. Bumpy didn't look at Bruno. He looked at Silvio, and he delivered his promise, low enough to feel like a vow. 12 hours, Bumpy said. By sunrise, you'll wish you never found that stoop. Silvio's smile tightened. For the family, Silvio said softly, like a warning. Bumpy nodded once. For my mother, Bumpy replied, and walked out. Harlem heard about the blocked door before Bumpy reached the building. That's the thing outsiders never understand. They think information moves by phones and paperwork. In Harlem, it moves by eyes. A woman leaning out a window, a barber pausing mid-taper, a bodega owner going quiet behind the counter. They didn't realize one thing. A neighborhood can become a network faster than any institution. Bumpy reached 22 Braddock Lane and stopped at the bottom step. He looked up. Bruno and Raynard filled the doorway like a joke that wasn't funny. The hallway behind them was dim. You could hear the radiator clank and the soft shuffle of his mother's slippers inside. Bruno smiled. He cracked one knuckle, then another. Be smart, Bruno murmured. Raynard tapped his unlit cigarette. Your mother? Okay? Raynard asked like he cared. Bumpy's voice stayed calm. She will be, Bumpy said. Bruno leaned forward, a little too familiar. Tell your boy, Bruno said, repeating the sentence, savoring it. This is what disrespect looks like. Freeze that, because Bumpy smiled. Not warm, not friendly, a smile with no invitation in it. Disrespect, Bumpy said softly, tasting the word, is what a man uses when he has no leverage. Bruno's smile tightened. Raynard's eyes narrowed, and behind Bumpy you could feel the block gathering without gathering. A man at the corner pretending to read a paper, a woman with groceries standing still too long, a teen on a bike circling slow. Harlem wasn't yelling. Harlem was watching. Bumpy didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten violence. He just said one line that changed the air. My mother's door isn't negotiable, Bumpy said. Bruno cracked one knuckle slower. Be smart, he whispered again. Bumpy nodded. That's what I'm being, Bumpy said, and turned away. That confused them. Because they expected him to explode. That was the mistake. Hor 3. Back at Savoy Deli. Fluorescent buzz overhead. Steam hissing from the coffee machine. Bumpy laid out the problem in plain language. They want a reaction, Ruthie said immediately, ink-stained finger tapping her notepad. Eddie nodded. They want a reason to call the cops necessary. Miss Odessa sipped tea. Eyes sharp, baby. They want to teach the block fear. Leon's knee bounced under the table. So what do we do? Bumpy's eyes stayed calm. We make their intimidation expensive, Bumpy said. Ruthie leaned in. With what? Bumpy's voice went low. With paper, he said. Paper can kill you in this town. And Bumpy knew exactly which paper Silvio Kane couldn't afford to be seen holding. One proof object. Exactly one. A payoff ledger. Not cash in a bag. A book. The kind a fixer keeps when he thinks nobody will ever see it. Because the book is how he remembers who owes who. And the ledger had a signature feature people would never forget. a red stamp across the cover that read Quiet Fund, and a cigarette burn punched clean through one name on page 2, like somebody tried to erase a man by scorching the paper. Eddie exhaled. "Where is it?" Bumpy nodded toward Eddie. "Your old friend at Property Records." Eddie's jaw tightened. "You mean Lila Red?" Ruthie frowned. "That's not Property Records." Eddie shook his head. "She ain't switchboard no more. She files liens now. Everybody moves somewhere." Miss Odessa smiled faintly. "Baby, Harlem don't lose people. Harlem relocates them." Leon swallowed. "We're stealing a ledger?" Bumpy's eyes locked on him. Or 5. Eddie and Leon went to the Marrone Street Records Annex, a damp building that smelled like mildew and old ink, where file cabinets squealed when you opened them, like they were protesting. Lila Red met them in a back room, humming softly like she was trying to keep her hands from shaking. Her tell hadn't changed. The humming never stopped. "I knew you'd come," Lila said, humming. "When men start blocking mothers, somebody always comes." Eddie kept his voice gentle. "Lila, we need the Quiet Fund ledger." Lila's humming thinned. "That book is poison." Leon leaned in. "Please." Lila looked at Leon, eyes tired. "Baby, don't say please, like it's candy." Eddie nodded once. 2 complications already. Somebody's watching, and somebody's going to try to take it. Lila's humming paused. "You're not wrong." She opened a drawer and slid out a thick book, wrapped in brown paper, red stamp on the cover. "Quiet Fund." Lila whispered. "Don't open it here." Leon reached for it, and that's when the first complication snapped shut. Footsteps in the hallway, measured patient, not lost. A man's voice drifted through the door, smooth as oil. "For the family," Silvio Kane murmured. Leon froze. Eddie's eyes hardened. Lila's humming stopped completely. That's how you know fear is real, when it interrupts your habits. Silvio's gold cigarette case clicked open and shut outside the door. "We can do this easy," Silvio said softly. "Let's keep things quiet." The handle turned. The door opened. Silvio stepped in smiling, Bruno behind him cracking knuckles one finger at a time, like he'd been waiting for a count. "Be smart," Bruno whispered. Silvio's eyes landed on Leon first. "Leon," Silvio said, gentle, "you're a good kid. You don't have to carry old men's problems." Leon's knee bounced so hard the chair squeaked. Silvio continued. "Soft. Give me the book. You get money. You get safe. Everybody forgets your name." That was the ally fracture, right there, on screen. Leon's fingers twitched toward the wrapped ledger. His mouth opened. "I could," Leon started. Eddie stepped closer, voice low and hard. "Leon," Eddie said, "don't buy safety with betrayal. It comes with interest." Leon swallowed, shame hitting him like cold water. Miss Odessa wasn't there, but her words felt like they were, "A deal that saves you today will own you tomorrow." Leon clenched his jaw. "No," Leon said, voice shaking. "No deal." Bruno's knuckles stopped cracking. Silvio's smile tightened. "For the family," Silvio repeated, but now it sounded like a threat, instead of a blessing complication. 2 arrived like a trap door. 2 uniformed men stepped into the back room behind Silvio. Captain Sutter's men, not building security. One of them lifted a hand. "What's going on here?" Silvio didn't look at them. He didn't have to. He clicked his cigarette case. "Let's keep things quiet," he murmured. Lila's eyes widened. Eddie lifted his hand slightly. "Not surrender. Just calm. Quiet is fine," Eddie said. "But if you seize that book, you're seizing public records." The uniformed man blinked. "That book isn't public." Eddie nodded. "Then explain why it's filed in a city annex." Silvio's eyes narrowed. Bruno cracked. One knuckle. Slow. "Be smart," Bruno whispered. Eddie leaned closer to the uniformed men, voice still calm. "You want to make a mother's doorway a headline?" Eddie asked. Because that's where this goes if you touch it. The cop hesitated, not because he grew a conscience, because he pictured paperwork, and paperwork is where cops get trapped. Eddie grabbed the ledger, shoved it into Leon's arms, and moved. They didn't run like criminals. They walked like men who belonged. Silvio watched them leave. Smile gone, for the family, he whispered again. But now it sounded like he was convincing himself. Har 8, back in the Monarch's rear room, the ledger sat on the table, under one lamp, like a confession waiting to be read. Ruthie stared at the red stamp. Quiet fund, like it was glowing. Miss Odessa didn't blink. Bumpy opened the book carefully. Page 1, neat columns, neat dates, neat lies. Page 2, a cigarette burn punched through a name, Captain Roland Sutter, like someone had tried to erase the cost of procedure. Ruthie whispered, "That's him." Eddie nodded. "That's the link." Bumpy's voice stayed calm. "That's the leverage," he said. Har 10. The institutional showdown happened where institutions hate being embarrassed. The precinct conference room, bright lights, cold coffee, a flag in the corner like a prop. Captain Sutter sat behind his desk, tapping his fountain pen twice. "Tap, tap, procedure," Sutter said, smiling. "What can I do for you, Mr. Johnson?" Silvio Kane sat in the chair beside the desk. Cigarette case clicking open and shut. "For the family?" Silvio murmured, polite. Bruno stood by the door, knuckles cracking. "Be smart," Bruno whispered. Ruthie stood near the wall with her notepad hidden, but ready. Eddie leaned back, tired eyes steady. Miss Odessa sat quiet, purse in her lap like a judge holding a verdict. Leon hovered near the corner, determined not to flinch again. Sutter smiled wider. "I hear there was commotion, a misunderstanding." Bumpy didn't sit until he chose to. He placed the ledger on Sutter's desk, red stamp facing up. Quiet fund, freeze that, because the visible reaction was instant. Captain Sutter's pen slipped and rolled off the desk, clacking onto the floor. Silvio's cigarette case snapped shut too hard, metal on metal like a bite. Bruno's knuckles stopped mid-crack. The room went silent, the way rooms go silent when the air realizes it's guilty. No big speech, few lines, mechanically undeniable. Bumpy's voice stayed soft. "My mother's door got blocked," Bumpy said, "and your name is in this book." Sutter's jaw tightened. Tap, nothing. The pen was gone. "Procedure," Sutter tried, but the word came out thin. Silvio leaned forward quickly. "Let's keep things quiet." Ruthie stepped in, voice sharp. "Quiet doesn't erase dates," Eddie added calm. "And stamps don't lie." Sutter's face flushed. "Where did you get that?" Sutter snapped. Bumpy's eyes stayed steady. "The same place your integrity went," Bumpy said softly. "Filed." Silvio's smile cracked. "This is extortion." Miss Odessa finally spoke, voice velvet with steel. "Baby," she said. "Extortion is what you call it when the poor man learns your language." Bruno shifted, shoulders widening. "Be smart," Bruno whispered, but now it sounded like he was begging the room to rewind. Bumpy didn't raise his voice. He leaned in, slower, meaner. "Captain," Bumpy said, "by sunrise either my mother walks in peace or this ledger walks into daylight." Sutter swallowed. Silvio stared at the book like it was a snake. Ruthie's presence was a threat without being one. Because public pressure is leverage that doesn't need fists. The institution resisted, of course. Sutter tried to delay. He tried to seize the ledger as evidence. He tried to push Bumpy into admitting how he got it. But corroboration was already loaded. Ruthie had names and dates. Eddie had a former colleague ready to attest that Sutter's procedure had been purchased before. Miss Odessa had community leaders who would show up at dawn if needed. Quietly, collectively, unignorable, so Sutter yielded the only way institutions yield. Not out of goodness. Out of self-preservation. He cleared his throat. "We can address the situation," Sutter said carefully. Bumpy nodded once. "Address it now," Bumpy replied. Day 2, 3:58 a.m., the 4th of March, 1961, Braddock Lane. Harlem quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the whole block was holding its breath. No laughter. No dice game clicks. No radio singing through open windows. Just the faint hiss of steam from manholes and the occasional car rolling too slow. That night, the neighborhood didn't become violent. It became coordinated. Store owners didn't serve certain faces. Cab drivers couldn't find certain addresses. A church deacon stood on the corner with his hands folded, watching without staring. A woman on a stoop kept knitting, needle moving like a metronome, eyes never leaving the doorway. They didn't realize one thing. Harlem can enforce a boundary without throwing a punch by 5:32 a.m. Bruno and Raynard were gone from the mother's doorway, not chased, not harmed, just removed, by pressure they couldn't fight without making it loud. And loud was exactly what they couldn't afford. At 8:09 a.m., the apology arrived, not by letter, not by phone. In person, a black sedan rolled up like it was trying not to look important. Silvio Kane stepped out first, cigarette case clicking open and shut. "For the family," he murmured to himself. Then the boss emerged, Rocco Lanza, heavy coat, tired eyes, a man used to being obeyed. His tail was smoothing his tie knot twice whenever he felt vulnerable. He walked up the stoop with Silvio and stopped at the doorway like he was approaching a church. He didn't believe in. Bumpy stood at the bottom step, calm. His mother stood behind the screen door, Bible in hand, face unreadable. Rocco cleared his throat. "Mrs. Johnson," Rocco said, voice careful, "I apologize for the disturbance. Freeze that." Because you could see it. Rocco's hand trembled just enough to make his tie knot shift. Silvio's cigarette case stopped clicking. Bruno, standing near the car, didn't crack his knuckles at all. The room was the street now, and the street had decided who it belonged to. Bumpy didn't gloat. He didn't smile big. He just watched. Rocco continued, choosing words like they were glass. "We want peace," Rocco said, understanding. Bumpy's voice stayed soft. "Peace is what you ask for when your plan fails," Bumpy replied. Rocco swallowed. His eyes flicked toward the building, toward curtains, toward faces that weren't hiding anymore. Because the apology came with something else. Fear, not fear of Bumpy alone. Fear of the block. Rocco nodded slowly. Silvio leaned in. "Quick, let's keep things quiet." Bumpy cut him off with one calm sentence. "My mother sleeps quiet," Bumpy said. "You don't silence stretched." Then Rocco did something that told the truth more than any words. He handed Bumpy an envelope. No money flashed, no details spoken, just a gesture of concession. Bumpy didn't open it. He looked at Rocco. "What is it?" Bumpy asked. Rocco's jaw tightened. "And understanding." Bumpy nodded once. "Good," Bumpy said. "Understand this. You don't bring business to a mother's door," leaving like a man who finally heard the neighborhood's answer. Aftermath hit fast. Captain Sutter didn't get arrested in this legend. He got reassigned. Administrative duty pending review, which is what they call a man when they want him silent, without admitting he was bought. Silvio Kane's access got colder. Phones didn't return calls as fast. Favored doors opened slower. Because the quiet fund ledger had done what ledgers do. It reminded everyone who'd been paying whom. Bruno lost his swagger on that block. Not because he got beat, because he got denied, and denial is poison to muscle. Leon paid a cost too. A patrolman gave him a friendly visit, reminding him to stay out of grown men's affairs. Ruthie's editor got a warning call. Miss Odessa received a tax notice stamped urgent. Daddy's shop got inspected twice in 1 week. That's the bill you pay when you make powerful people feel exposed. Bumpy sat with his mother that evening, the apartment smelling like tea and old books, the radiator clanking like it was clearing its throat. His mother looked at him over her Bible. "You didn't have to do all that," she said softly. Bumpy's voice stayed gentle. "Yes," he said, "I did." She held his gaze. "Why?" she asked. Bumpy paused, then answered with the kind of truth that hurts because it's simple. "Because if they learn they can stand in your doorway," Bumpy said, "they'll stand in everybody's doorway." His mother nodded slowly. Then she gave him a proverb of her own, quiet as prayer. "Baby," she said, "a man who protects his mother protects the whole block, whether he means to or not." Bumpy exhaled, and he delivered the moral line, clean and quotable. The kind people repeat in barbershops without knowing where it came from. In Harlem, respect isn't enforced by the loudest man. It's enforced by the line the community agrees not to let you cross. He looked at the window, at the street lights, at the block that had gone quiet on purpose. Then, he added, "Softer, if you want to know who runs a city. Watch whose door stays sacred when the powerful get impatient." So, if that image stuck, the blocked doorway, the midnight quiet, the boss smoothing his tie knot and apologizing like his throat hurt, hit like and subscribe for more street legend stories told responsibly, where power flips without glamorizing harm. And tell me in the comments, was Bumpy defending his mother or defending Harlem's last boundary? Next time, we're going even colder, because a routine eviction notice shows up with a red stamp that shouldn't exist, and one phone log marked house eyes only turns a whole hearing room silent in 3 seconds.